Hello, my name is Tim Bernard, and this is Beyond the Headlines, where we take a little different look at what is going on around us. You could say this is a show about the blue pill or the red pill. If you want to stay in La La Land, you won't like what's coming. But this is my website. There's tons of information, links to a lot of other websites. Links to hundreds of hours of free documentaries and news clips and all sorts of stuff. So if you want to get a handle of what's going on, this is one of the places to go. And we're going to do a review on 2016, some of the bigger stories that went down, and how that relates to what's going on and what's coming in 2017, and also how it involves prophecy. And the mainstream media, this is a standard classic thing, as we did articles during the year, how little they are believed anymore by the vast majority of people. So what you do, and this is standard psyops taught in the military, is you deny everything, admit to nothing, and then make counter accusations. And what is one of the big news items at the end of 2016? Fake news. Of course, they're the ones who do the fake news. Remember, we had the story about Brian Williams, and of course, it wasn't that he was lying, it was that he was lying about himself in the lie, which then he loses even more of his credibility. And there's only 6 corporations that control 90% of the propaganda ministers, because that's what all of the mainstream news, whether it's fake news, Fox News, or CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all reading from the script. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Another famous quote of Hitler's is, "Fortunately for leaders that their people are unwilling to think." False flag operations. We had plenty of them last year. We're going to have plenty more this year, with the propaganda ministers helping them and coddling these operations along. Whether it was during the election, the wars, it's all, well, it's like, well, we'll have some stories here shortly, but also remember, the first casualty of war is the truth. Of course, we've been doing these stories for years because Bush got caught buying fake news. And I think they got caught spending about $1 billion. And of course, that 166 million is just a number for us. They'll spend as much as they feel like, because they put it in sitcoms, TV shows, movies, in just every location, which is, as Eisenhower said, and Obama quietly signs the law for the ministry of truth. Our press is not free, and they're trying to do everything they can, and we've been talking about this for years, to shut down the alternative media. And they will shut us down eventually. For a little while they will get to completely control, but not yet. And they do the fake news to push you off of the real narrative, to hide what's really going on with a slant, by even reporting things that are true within the overall story, but it gets you to focus on something else instead of what you should be focusing on. And this is one from years ago, an article that we did. The U.S. repeals a propaganda ban and spreads government-made news to Americans. See, they just keep passing more and more laws, and here they were repealing a propaganda ban. Pope Francis, one of the big stories just recently was Pope Francis compares fake news consumption to eating feces. I would have thought that he would have compared it to sin, because that's what it is. Telling a lie, deceiving people, bearing false witness against someone, that is a sin. And this was a news story here, and it definitely had to make the end of the year show, because it is what's all about. Post-truth, the word of the year, Oxford Dictionary, relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Relativism, rationalization, that's post-truth. And of course, this is an old CIA director under Reagan. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Or we had Karl Rove, Bush's brain, who said, "I create reality." Or we have David Axelrod for the Democrats, and many other people. But we are the resistance, the V, from the Vietnam War, for the peace sign. Just give peace a chance. Also, the partisans in France used to mark a V in public places to denote that they knew the Vichy government, which was spelled with a V, was that they were traitors. Here's a book. I have a link, permanent link, right on my website to this book by the Club of Rome. The world's already been divided up. We are coming to you from Global Region 1, FEMA District 10. See, the 10 FEMA districts are just subunits of the larger Big 10. And in there, I have a page marked where you can read where they talk about using the climate issue. Oh, and this was 40 or 50 years ago, to control people, and that people are the problem. Because, of course, they're pushing the narrative that there's too many people, we need to restrict it, and they want to depopulate the earth. I mean, this is a eugenics operation. You study this stuff at all, the Georgia Guidestones from 30-some years ago now, where because they have to tell you what they're going to do to you, and you have to let them do it. Or even worse, you're going to help them kill yourself. That's what's really going on. Because the first of the new 10 commandments is to maintain a population on the earth of under 500 million. See, they're a counterfeit God. They're setting it up. And but people just say, well, we don't like what you're saying. Well, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. But this is what's coming. This is what's unfolding all around us. Not in the future. Now. It's already started. Well into it. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Of course, once again, they did the cremation of care down in California. Every Republican president's been there in the 20th century. Not Trump, because he's not a part of the club, as Newt Gingrich said, who's a total rhino, globalist. I mean, that's really what we have here. We have the globalist minions, and then the people who love their country and are trying to save their country. And that's where they do a mock sacrifice of a child there on that altar. And you think that would maybe be news? I don't know. That leaders from academia, the business world, finance, all go to this place. And this is the lake where they bring the child in effigy. That's the altar up there in front of that stone owl, Molech, right out of the Old Testament. And this was something put together last year, but it leads into the next slide. Just shows the falling of our country, and this is New York City. That's back in the 50s. They put crosses on their skyscrapers. Then in 2001, you can see the devil's face in the smoke. And then in 2015, they put that picture they put on the Empire State Building there is the, I believe it's Hindu god Kali. I know it is Kali. If you just type in C-A-L-I, the god of death. And that's what, I mean, this is a culture of death. And this just happened in September of this last year. They brought a replica because ISIS destroyed it. You know, the JV team that actually we funded and got going, but you know, we've done stories on that infinitum. But this is the archway to the entrance of the Temple of Baal. Totally pagan. Now, they rebuilt it. The one you see over there was destroyed, and here they've put it right in a park in New York City. The gates of hell for the demons. Oh, and here's our buddy Podesta. This was one of Hillary Clinton's top campaign managers. Looking at, these are referencing some pagan mythology, and he also got caught up in some, at the very least, they were very strange sounding emails, of course, which have, instead of talking about what was in the emails, they are talking about, oh, the Russians did it, without ever offering any proof. And if the featured video up on my website is an intelligence officer who said, no, we released them and gave them to Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, because they know the inside baseball on the Clintons. And this is a great thing. It goes back even farther, because remember what Jesus said about lukewarm people. All the evil in the world is due to lukewarm Catholics. And while they weren't as bad as it was for Obama, it's still 40% of Catholics, roughly, a little over, voted for Hillary. And you either don't have a clue who Hillary is and what she says she's doing, or you don't have a clue who Jesus is and what he wants. This is coming up next year now, on September 23rd. The last time it was around was 3915 BC. And it's literally a constellation that fulfills the beginning of the 12th chapter in the book of Revelation, so you can look that up. They know what's going on. We know what's coming. We know who wins. But the amount of bloodshed, the amount of pain and suffering that is coming depends on how much you and I do to stop this madness, because that's what it is. 400 years ago, our mother pointed to the 20th century. Specifically, this is a church-approved apparition. You can look it up. And she said that the vehicle being used would be the Masonic sects. And we also have, of course, that book, AA 1025, Anti-Apostle 1025, which talks about them infiltrating the church. It talks about the morals and the corruption of our times, which, just look around, who can deny that this is what's going on? And then she also said that it would be worse because people who should have spoken out will fall silent. And why will they fall silent? Because it's not comfortable to tell the truth. They don't want that cross. This was a main story from last time, and as we are wrapping up the Christmas season here, the Washington Post, the Virgin Mary offends rape victims by her purity. No, she will help them regain their purity. But the way to understand the book of Revelation, Alpha and Omega, first and last, the angels have been sent to the four corners of the earth to hurt the earth. It looks like we might have an interesting year this year. Now there's also maybe some other things coming in the sky. But Father Zudak here, S-U-D-A-C, he received that in 1999. That's a supernatural cross on his forehead. You and I aren't going to get that cross. He now has the full stigmata, and he still has that cross. So like 16, 17 years later. And Eisenhower said that this system that was around, the only thing he didn't say is he didn't talk about the money changers, and he didn't say that, well, the reason I'm telling you this is because this is who I work for and have worked for and who put me into power. But it would get into every facet of our life, from religion, academia, social, government, and business and industry. Every facet of our life has been wound around entertainment, the narrative, and the military-industrial complex. And later on, and I have a permanent link to this if you want to read it, or you can actually hear the speech too. I've got both links. But he also talks about a scientific, technological elite that would be controlled by the allocation of money. And that's a very powerful way to control a group. Well, you're not going to write what I want you to write? Well, no money for you. The new UN boss tells Europe migration is unstoppable, says politicians should ignore the voters. This is what they want, just some technocrats who will sit on top of us and just bleed us dry. And it's like Quigley said, the people will wake up when the velvet glove comes off the iron fist. And Obama's just partying on, 97,000 pages of red tape. I mean, this guy is like unbelievable. He has destroyed our country. And I've been telling you for a long time, we mentioned even earlier about this internet censorship. Well, it just happened this fall in October. They gave away the control of the internet to a more global body. And China wants it, well, they censor it at home. They want it censored over here. And the propaganda ministers over here, the high price boys, and the government officials, they would like it to be censored here in America. You know, the Constitution is for other people. It's not for the anointed who are above us. And here's a couple of their favorite tricks. Oh, just say it's for anti-terrorism, or it's to protect the kids. Sure it is. You're the ones poisoning them. Jefferson wrote, a nation which expects to be ignorant and free and in a state of civilization expects that which never was and never will be. He also said he feared bankers far more than standing armies, and that if we ever got a private bank like we do now have, we would lose the nation through periods of inflation and deflation. And Aldous Huxley was the author of Brave New World. There's stuff online. If you'd like to hear him say it, this is just one of his many quotes. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. And radical Islam, which of course the Democrats will not even talk about, and who are openly promoting, and so are the rhinos in the Republican Party. They may say something, but as you see, they're lining up to try and stop Trump. People like Paul Ryan, the leadership in the Republican Party quite frankly, should have been voted out. But this is what's coming. I mean, look at what they've done in Europe. And I've played tapes before. I don't think I'm going to play one now, but where they openly talk about overthrowing the countries that they're in, whether it's Germany, the U.S., a main player in Berlin. Well, I think I have a slide on that. But there was a town in the U.S., I don't think it was Flint, but it was right next to it. It was a suburb of Detroit, is now under Sharia law. And there's some others that are close, and they're setting up private enclaves, no-go zones, where people can't even go in. And one of the leaders from Guantanamo Bay said, yeah, we're going to wrap ourselves in your civil liberties, and then we're going to use the money that you give us. See, we're paying for our own destruction. That's what's so sick about all this. Oh, but don't worry about it. Obama's on top of it. And here's his legacy. There was no reason to blow up the Middle East. Just because you got a peace prize doesn't mean you can blow it all up. And I remember what happened on 9/11. Syria and Libya and Iraq, even if you want to believe the fairy tale of 9/11, and more stuff came out on 9/11 this year, there was no excuse for going in and doing what they did. I mean, there's Iraq up on top. Libya is the second picture down. There's Yemen. And then there's Syria. I mean, these are war crimes. Of course, the Bush and Cheney were the big boys behind Iraq, but Libya, Yemen, and Syria are all on Obama's watch. And so they should both be going to jail. Maybe a cell right next to each other, they could sit around and talk about who was the most evil. Another thing that the administration has really been trying to do in this PSYOP is to create more and more friction between the people and the police force. They want to get a civil war going. That's what they tried to do in the 60s with the students and stuff protesting the war, and also the civil rights movement. Funded by bankers. In this case, it's funded by a top financer named George Soros. That guy's a bag of pus. Yeah, here's Berlin's new Secretary of State, pro-Sharia conservative Muslim. And they've been killing tons of Christians. This was just one story, at least 25 killed in an explosion at a Coptic Christian chapel in Cairo. Of course, one of the big stories of the year was Brexit. They did everything to try and stop it. They did everything to get them to lose the vote. Lying, they cheated, we did stories on that, but now they're doing everything they can to try to stop it from happening, delaying it, pushing it out, and there's a real battle. Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, is coming back now. I mean, he gets death threatened all the time. That's really why people are lukewarm. They have what's called feigned ignorance. They pretend, plausible deniability. George Washington University history majors no longer required to take U.S. history. See, if you don't know the past, you forget the past, you are doomed to repeat it. And our country was founded because it's always been about the money. They took away our colonial script, caused a depression, and in the depression, then there were enough people, because there were always politically active people who were against the system. But when they got too greedy and collapsed it all, then there was enough people who got off their butt, because when you got nothing to lose, you lose it. And so they were able to get some people to fight the war. And that's why they're doing everything to get rid of the guns and stuff now, because they know how bad they're going to hurt us. And it's even worse than that. I've played clips of Larry Grathwohl where Obama's buddies, like Bill Ayers, a long time ago, were sitting around talking about the camps and putting people in there, and they were asked, what about the people who won't come around to your view of this totalitarian state? And they just said, well, we'll just have to kill them. And they figured they were going to kill 20 plus million people. This was back in the 60s, early 70s. So, and this is what happens. The Cultural Revolution in China, the Soviet Union purged, Cambodia purged when they went commie. This is what these guys do. Commie, totalitarian, that's really what it is, a totalitarian system. And the money changers were the people who funded the Bolshevik Revolution, funded Hitler, funded Mao, and caused the Great Recession, which is not over, actually, and who are pushing this welcome. It's been Agenda 21. I've done stories on that, even whole shows on that. And the updated version is Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, I have no privacy, and life has never been better. I mean, and it's going to be really getting bad. This is a member of parliament from Denmark. The bankster takeover, it just rolls on. I would urge you to maybe watch All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. I've played that before. It's a featured documentary. It's only about 45 minutes. And here's the richest family in the world from back in the 1800s, and they still are. Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes its laws. See, and the reason they don't care is because they'll just cause a depression, and then the people will get mad. They won't get mad at who's really doing it, though we're trying to wake people up to this, and we've come a long ways. Believe me, 10 years when I used to talk about the Federal Reserve, people's eyes would just glaze over. But now most people know it's private, and that's what it's all about. Just keep pushing, 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 pushing. This is the real war, is an information war. And we've had that clip of Hillary saying that, oh yeah, it is an information war and we're losing it. That's why they're coming after us with this fake news narrative, trying to blame everything on Russia to cause a problem. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the next false flag op is something, and then they'll just blame it on Russia. Like they might set a bomb off, blame it. They could blame it on Russia. They could blame it on the Muslims if they wanted to. Either one, whichever one they feel would serve them best, is who they'll blame it on. And it's looking like they're going with the Russians because they're trying to then link Trump to the Ruskies. Now, the word that we're getting is while they're doing all this, they may not get away with it because it's not their time yet to rule completely. But God is letting us see, and if we just all back off, then He'll let them have their way. We need to keep praying because that's really our most powerful weapon here. but they're master manipulators at what is going on. Hillary, back in 2015, was, and you look it up, just type in Hillary fun camps. She talked about these fun camps. I've done stuff and I have permanent links on my website to the official military documents of how to run these re-education camps. That's exactly what they're called. And she spoke about it just before the election. Caught a little clip of that. And so they couldn't collapse the economy before because they didn't own both horses in the race. So they've held Trump back, or since Trump got in, they, right now, it's looking like they're going to try to blow out the economy and then blame it on him. And if they keep raising interest rates, I mean, like I said, we're already worse off than we were 8 years ago. But that doesn't mean there's not pockets, and for many people, I mean, at the height of the Depression, over 50% of the people were still working and stuff. And so, but just since I've been in Seattle the second time around, and there's a hell of a lot more homelessness now than there was when I was here in the 90s, but just in the last 7 or 8 years, it's just exploded here. And so, you know, everywhere you drive, there's encampments, Obamavilles, because they are artificially slowing our country down. And that's why things are looking up, because they know that Trump will actually let the economy grow and not artificially suppress it and screw everything up. And they're pressing new technology. They've slowed down the implementation of solar energy and how efficient it could be, and batteries for storage and everything. From Tesla's work was suppressed and hidden. And even stuff we have going now. It'd be so easy if we would truly have a free market and truly let this go. See, but the money that just some of the money that they blew, you know, that 500 mil that they blew on Solyndra, and all they got to show for it was an empty warehouse with a sign on the front of it, and then they pocketed the rest of the money, and of course no one goes to jail. You know, that was the difference between Iceland and here. We could learn from the people of Iceland who stood up. Well, and we stood up in the beginning, and the politicians voted against the bailout, but then the banksters said, oh yeah, well, there'll be martial law and a depression and stuff. And so they just rolled over and just gave them a blank check. And it was a lot more than the 700 billion that they talked about. That's why we need to audit the Fed, the Federal Reserve. It's the Fed who is causing all of the problems, even though they're supposed to be making it good. So that's what we've got to do. We have to go after the Fed and the head and 2 or 3 of the governors. There's a dozen governors, and then the head. I believe there's a dozen. Anyway, several are going to be getting replaced in the next year or 2. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get Trump in the next few weeks. He needs our prayers. I pray for him every day. I pray for Obama. What's his record? Well, we have a record number employed, but we have a record number that are not in the labor force. And one of Obama's, there's an article on my website about one of Obama's economic advisors said that 94% of Obama's jobs that were created during his tenure in office were part-time. So See, and you can really see, you've really been able to see, if you're at all looking at this false, the fake left-right paradigm that's going on, the Republicans and the Democrats. When in reality, remember last year, one of the things they did, when the Republicans, owned Congress, they gave Obama a larger budget. They're supposed to be conservative, fiscally conservative, and they give Obama more than he asked for. I mean, that they couldn't even believe it. Oh, well, great. And now, who are the deadbeats that are jumping on this Russian bandwagon? People like McCain, who sold us out in the S&L, savings and loan chicanery. He was one of the 5 senators. And there's been other things. He was the fall guy 8 years ago to get Obama in. I mean, they ran a dead horse. They collapsed the economy, and they still barely got Obama in. Of course, he thinks he's the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. We've had this huge rise in food stamps under Obama. Shipping has gone down dramatically in the last year. Hanjin, one of the largest container companies in the world, went bankrupt. So a couple other things is that they're getting ready. The rise of the cashless society is continuing to unfold. They're doing stuff in India. They're talking about it here, like getting rid of the $100 bill, stuff like that, phasing out checks. England next year will be phasing out checks, and it's not going to be good, because one of the things they've talked about at Davos this year was the negative interest rates, and they started to use negative interest rates this year, but people start pulling their money out of the banks and stuff. So that's why they want us to be completely digital, so that they have complete control of our money. And another thing that's been solidified in the last year is there won't be bailouts again. There'll be bail-ins. They'll just go into your account and take money out of it. And you say, well, they can't do that. Well, they've done it before. It's on the books. They did it in Cyprus a few years ago. They did it here. That's why, remember all the talk of people putting their money in, keeping it at home and stuff? Well, that's why. The SDR is already set up, special drawing rights. The yuan has been put into that's the RMB, or the money for China, has already been put into this basket currency. There's going to be a global currency reset. Probably a good chance that will happen this year. Now it's one of the things that they've wanted to get it done, but it's like anything, they've got to wait and do it at the right time. And this was a fellow, Charles Lindbergh's father was a congressman from Minnesota back when they got this Federal Reserve Bank in. And here's his quote, when the president signs this act, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and I did stories because it was just a 100-year charter, and it came up back in 2013, and of course there was no talk about it in the media. It just rolled right through, and they went to Jekyll Island, which is where it had been put together a year before under great secrecy. And they went right to where they did it the previous time and celebrated how they had taken over our country with money. And it says, so it goes on to say, the invisible government by the money power proven to exist by the monetary trust investigation will be legalized. The new law will create inflation whenever the trusts want inflation. From now on, depressions will be From now on, depressions will be scientifically created. And that is what Jefferson said back when the country was founded, through that a private bank, through inflation and deflation, because it's all about consolidation, that we would lose the country that they founded a couple hundred years ago. So this is very real. It's very important. They're moving towards it. One of the last signs I spoke about 8 or 9 years ago would be that we would see the flight from the T-bills. People would start dumping it at the very end. Initially they would be going slow and trying to get as much money as they could out of it before it becomes basically worthless, which is something like the IMF said, that it would lose its value overnight. Well, what it looks like, the number is they're going to devalue it by 30%. And now that won't affect us that much the very first days that it happens. But as this filters through the system, especially buying foreign goods, it's going to be huge. And now we're hearing that a little while after the first devaluation, they'll do another. Now maybe with Trump in, they'll back off until the end of his term or something, till the next election. First, I suspect they're going to try to get rid of him, hopefully by the grace of God, who allowed him to even get in. We will be able to foil their problems, because one of the things that he stopped is some of these trade agreements that were so ridiculous, whether it was NAFTA that Clinton gave us, and CAFTA from Bush, and the TPP that Obama just gave us, you know, negotiated by industry leaders and the government whores that they pay for. So, but about the dumping of the T-bills and stuff, as I was going through one of the stories that I just did, I believe it was last week or at the beginning of December, was how the Chinese had dumped like $400 billion. They're no longer the top owner of our debt, which is one of the things I said we'd see near the end, before everyone there's going to be this global reset. And that's why the Chinese and Russians and others are buying and stockpiling gold, because that's how it's all going to be played. And then we're going to find out just how much gold we really have, which could be. So anyway, they gave away $400 billion, and to give you an idea, earlier, like in January, I came across an article where they were going, "Oh man, they're just selling our T-bills," and it was $47 billion. So it's a tenfold increase by the end of the year. And the last guy who took them on was JFK, who took on the money changers, and this was a silver certificate. It was Executive Order 11110, and shortly after signing that, just a few months, is when the coup d'etat, they made sure that everybody knows what would happen if you cross them. Here is the actual executive order. Here's a $5 silver certificate right there. And here's the headshot. Yeah, no, he got hit in the front, just like his press secretary said at the hospital that morning. But of course that didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to put out. So the propaganda ministers just said, oh yeah, he was hit by one guy who actually never fired a shot in the back. He was hit in the back. He was also hit in the front. It's the triangulation. There were multiple shooters in multiple spots. That's how a professional hit is done. This was another story they've been doing for a while, and they're really getting close now to physically releasing, and may already have, this genetically modified salmon, which is so dumb. Of course, they tell you it'll be fine, but they say that the GMO corn is fine. And here's some rats that ate GMO corn for 3 months, and look at the tumors they got. Don't worry about it. We know. We're scientists. Yeah, right. And they openly wrote that this is what they would do. I mean, this is a guy who wrote a book in '53, a globalist. It's not someone like me. This is saying, yeah, this is what we're going to do to you guys. You know, telling his friends, because the little people, oh, you guys don't read even, and you're too busy playing tiddlywinks. Through diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Not really, because many people will just choose, even though they'll hear the other side, they'll believe it's more comfortable to do this side. This is social engineering. I mean, we've had lukewarm people forever. Jesus spoke about lukewarm people. He speaks about lukewarm people in the book of Revelation, how he wishes you were hot or cold, but since you are lukewarm, I spit you out of my mouth. And our mother warned us 400 years ago about the lukewarm people of our age who would not speak out. And the reason they don't speak out is because they're afraid, really. And it wouldn't be comfortable to speak out and tell the truth. And also, if you ever look at Dante's Inferno, a medieval play about everything, it's like he said, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in a time of crisis remain neutral. And we are in a time of crisis. Just look around. By any metric. This was the big scare of the year, the Zika virus. We did tons of stories on that. It's all for more reasons to shoot people up with vaccines, because they cause a lot of these problems. This is what they put in our water, sodium fluoride. They say it's good, but look, right on the bag, it says that one of the target organs is the teeth, and of course the nervous system, and it bioaccumulates in, especially, boys are more susceptible than girls. And I've just shown you from the fish, from what they're putting in the water. And here's the FDA's own website talking about over 2 million serious adverse drug reactions yearly, and over 100,000 people die from legal drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, not the street drugs. And that's a whole nother story we've done tons of articles on. No nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. Obama came in saying he would stop the war. He stopped none, and he added wars. Destroyed Libya, destroyed Syria. And I told you when they were first starting to move into Syria, not only the real reasons why, but also that Russia was going to put its foot down and go, no, 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 no. We're not having this. You've done enough. Speaking the truth in deceitful times is a revolutionary act. George Orwell, from his 1984 book. And boy, if you can't see 1984 unfolding right in front of us now, I mean, you're just not looking. You're probably not listening to the show anymore either. Because those people leave right away. This is way too real for most people. Because, hey, it's like some simple math. On September 11th, 2001, 3 buildings fell down. There were 2 planes. Oh, nothing hit that building. A 47-story building over 500 feet tall. The only building in the history of modern construction to just fall down. But if you look closely, see how the middle of the building, you blow out the center columns and the building falls in on itself. If you look at this, called Building 7 or the Solomon Brothers building. And this was big news all year. They just keep, 9/11, the day the world changed. No, nothing changed. Just same old crap. You pulled another false flag. There were warning signs everywhere. I mean, if you do almost any look into 9/11, you'll find out just how pathetic it was. And here's a place, here's over 2,500 now. Architects and engineers have put their livelihood on the line. They talk about 9/11 almost every day in newscasts. And every week, for sure. And do major shows. We're getting really close to see. This was from 2007. That's when they gave this date of 2017 and showed the little chip. And I've shown other bills and laws that have been passed setting up and legalizing chipping of human beings. And they started chipping human beings. We openly did articles about that back in 2004, 12 years ago. They tried 2 years ago, back in 2014, to the EU, those unelected bureaucrats who just told the politicians, ignore the voters. They were going to chip every baby. Now the chip with like a patch on its elbow, so that it wouldn't be on the hand, so that people wouldn't get, because that's what the prophecy is, about it coming in on the hand. And so this was just the latest one that came out, because they're going to sell it as something good. This is for people with mental disabilities. But of course, mental disabilities is the classic excuse used by totalitarian governments throughout history. Because, well, if you don't agree with us, you've got a mental problem. It's like, if you don't believe that the sun has no influence on our weather, you've got a mental illness. I mean, scientists have been coming out and saying that. Or just jailing people who have any question at all of the global warming narrative. And there was tons of evidence on that this year. This was a book that another top globalist wrote back in the 70s. Zbigniew Brzezinski, his daughter is Nika, on that morning talk show host, The Daily Joe or something like that. You better look outside the frying pan, my friends. It's getting very warm. Very, very warm. Actually, people are dying. Many people are dying. Look at the cancer rates, look at the autism rates. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Take a message from 9/11. It was Mahatma Gandhi's very first, the anniversary of his very first protest in South Africa. You can check the Gandhi Institute. If you don't believe me, we must be the change that we wish to see in the world. This must be a revolution of love, not hate. They're going to call it hate. They already do, as you know, if you don't agree with them. But we cannot, it's not going to be a revolution of silence. Seek the truth and bear witness to it. This is going to stop. This is a legal abortion. This isn't your body. This was her body. This is a little girl. There's a little child praying that we'll wake up, because God has always spanked, and He's going to spank us for the well over 50 million children we have now killed. Well over 50 million. And Nick Cannon continues to push this, and that's great. We need more black people to stand up to the truth. Planned Parenthood founded to exterminate black people. Amen, brother. Amen. You don't hear Al Sharpton ever say that. How about Jesse Jackson, because he cares so much? Or how about Oprah? You know, she's so indignant about anything that supposedly happens. They don't say a word about this. They have sold their souls. It's a complete disgrace. And over in the black neighborhood, just a little while ago, maybe about 2 months now, they put this big sign up. It's down now, but it was up on the side of their building: health, passion, freedoms, strength. But not for that little girl and all the little girls. This is Satan's temple. That's what that is. Black children are an endangered species, and the most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb. Over 50% of their children are aborted. And a black pro-life leader says that Planned Parenthood kills 266 unarmed black lives each day. Jesus sees what's going on. There will be change. The more that he has to do, the worse it's going to be for us. And he's warning us that it's going to be brutal. Remember what I told you? The other guys want to kill over 90% of us. So he can just stand back, and if you don't want him, you'll get them. Through prayer and fasting, we can change the world. If you don't have a prayer life, I would definitely get one, because it's only going to get harder as the trials start to come. This is my website. There's another website, InfoWars, Drudge, Zero Hedge. I have links to tons of websites on a bunch of different topics, so you can go there. If you want to get a hold of me, there's an email, there's the mail. One easy thing you can do is tell them about the show. If you live in Seattle and are on Comcast, it's Channel 77, Thursday, 8 to 9 p.m. And then at midnight it repeats. And then the next day, Friday, from 1 to 2 in the afternoon. So remember what my Sioux brothers say? Matakawe Oisin, we are all related. I hope you had a happy New Year's and that you have a blessed 2017, and that God would bless you and your family, and go out and have a great week and try to wake someone up. Talk to you next time. Bye.